I think that was one of the funnest ones, though, because JC and I we were broke, no money. We were always out of money. What was that all about? And here's we got stacks of tennis shoes in the back, and we're going to this Napa store in Buttonwillow, California. Buttonwillow, I'll remember that. And it's a Napa store, and I should have been I never prided myself in being a salesman, but I talked you into quitting at Boeing and going to work for the Squire Shop. Now that was a sales job if I ever did one. And then we pull into this thing and JC says, what are we going to do? I said, grab some tennis shoes. So we grab a bunch of tennis shoes, and we have this burn up piece of this broken brake line. I said, we need a brake line like that. He brings it out. He says, well, this is close. And I said, well, what's it worth? And he said, $8 or $12 or something. I said, JC, he picks up about 6 pairs of tennis shoes. What sizes do you guys all wear? 8, 10, 12, 14. Bring out all these tennis shoes. We walk away with the brake line, and we're short the tennis shoes. Well, Bob's pretty sharp, because if we come back, he goes, where's all the goddamn tennis shoes? And we had to explain to him that we saved his boat with those tennis shoes. So, one of the favorite stories that I have is JC and I were very close friends. We have been for a long time. And he worked, what the deal was if you put in a bunch of time, we kept track of your volunteer hours, and that went against the cost of flying you to the race. Jerry was a pretty good salesman too. He got guys to volunteer for plane tickets. So JC was going to land in Florida. And so we had made it to Florida, and of course we were supposed to stay at the race headquarters. Back then they had race headquarters, and our per diem wouldn't even come close to the rooms that we were at, supposed to stay in. And so we got these really cool little bungalows down there that were down on the water, and it was really cool. And I had to go get JC at the airport, and I'm standing there at the airport, and JC comes walking off, and that's kind of why I dressed up. He wore slacks, he had penny loafers on, he had a sport coat and a collared shirt, and I looked at him, I said, that is the last time you're going to wear clothes that nice until you get home, which was true. And he thought he was going to be pretty cool. Those clothes got left in the back of the motorhome. But it was just seeing him walk down all dressed up and clean and everything, and I'm going, boy, you're in for a surprise. So, kind of had to be there for that one, I guess.
Well, before I go to my best memory, since you guys are talking about breaks, and I don't know if Bob knows about this. Well, we'll do a break story, and we'll do the... I'm getting a heart attack. We'll do one where, I don't know, most people don't know this one is... we bought the new boat. Bob and I picked it up from Norm's down in Tacoma and brought it home. We'd driven back and forth a couple times on the freeway to Tacoma and back, and the first day of testing down in Seattle went pretty good. We packed up, and anyway, we're going, can't remember the street, but anyway, we're going up over the hill, and you turn by the funeral home. We're about halfway up, and all of a sudden, Bob Esma starts cussing and everything, and I go, what? He goes, look out the window. I look out the window, and the boat's going back. I mean, taking up all the lanes, jumping up on the sidewalk. The trailer, the brand new trailer, the trailer hitch had broke. Do you remember that, Bob? So we almost lost a brand new boat there. And then another one, I was talking with my friend Larry, after the boat crashed in Lake Washington. Larry and I were the ones that got sent down to the Mojave Desert to pick up the other boat. And back then, the way you learn to drive semis, they just see you in the truck and learn. And we had a time restraint, so we're speed, not following logbook rules and all that. And we get down there, and this isn't our trailer or anything, so we just hook it up, turn around, and start hauling ass home. We're going down one of these. Where was it buried? I don't know if it was. Anyway, we're going down. I mean, it's like 2 miles straight down, and all of a sudden Larry goes, Dan, look out the window. So again, I look out the window, and there's fire coming out of both sides of the brakes. You know, the trailer, so another trailer story. So again, we almost lost the boat. But anyway, back to my best memory is winning the first race with Chip in Utah. You know, it was both our first win and Craig's. And anyway, there's a lot of stories we can't tell on that one, but that was my favorite time. You have anything you want to say?
Hi. My favorite story, we brought up a gentleman, Bob Esplin, and everybody's saying he's kind of an interesting guy to work with. Tremendously smart. The guy, it was unbelievable to work with him. He's very difficult to work with, but he just knew so much. But the one thing he had trouble with is anybody asking him a question. Because it didn't matter what the question was, it was stupid. And he hated stupid questions. Well, I hope Danny remembers this, but we were on our way back to the first race the boat was ever in, which was in Madison, Indiana, the Gold Cup in '79. And we're somewhere in the Midwest in Nebraska, and you're going down highway, it's just corn on both sides of you. And we've been driving for all day, because Bob was the only guy that would drive the truck. He wouldn't let anybody else get near the truck, so Danny and we just kind of took up space. And as we're traveling along, all of a sudden we just see this big red patch in the middle of the highway. And we're like, oh, that's kind of ugly. And you kind of look about a quarter of a mile ahead of us, and you can see the lights on a state trooper car and this big semi truck. So we're pulling up to this thing, and Bob slows down. Of course, he's got to take care of the situation. That's what he was. And he pulls over. We get out of the truck, and we go walking up towards the front of this truck, and there's this cow just pasted on the front of this truck. Anyway, so the state trooper's standing there talking to the driver. He's a little bit shaken up at night. All I remember is Bob walking up to the state trooper and looks right at him and goes, well, what happened here? And all I could think of, I said, this is the guy that if you ask a technical question would just about kill you. And I just remember looking at Dan, and the cop looked at us, and he just shook his head and walked away. But anyway, that was just kind of I'll never forget that one. That's a classic.
Chris.
I got one. So Chris traveled all the way from upstate New York to be here.
All right.
Great to see you guys. I have one story that I was thinking of on the way here tonight. And since you're all such race boat people, you should appreciate it. Because the character was Henry Lauterbach. And we had, I don't know, threw a blade off a prop or something. The bottom was torn up, probably in Miami. I don't really remember what happened, but we were coming north. And we needed a place to work on the boat. And Chip knew that Henry Lauterbach hated honeycomb. And so, like, it was going to take, he basically didn't tell him the truth. And he told him that it just needed a little wood and aluminum. But Henry Lauterbach's probably not alive still, is he? So God bless him, but I'm not making fun of him. He talked like he had marbles in his mouth. And so we get there, and he sizes up the boat, and we moved in for like 3 days and worked on the boat at the Lauterbach shop. Thank God we had a shop. But every time it would get worse, we'd get a little further, and it was obvious that the damage was worse and worse all the time. And Henry Lauterbach, there's a little wooden aluminum. It's a small job, Bub. Called everybody Bub. And he'd look at Chip, and every time it'd get worse, he'd say, just a little wooden aluminum, Bub, just a little wooden aluminum. We got it fixed and moved on.
One funny moment about that accident, it did happen in Miami, and the water got under that aluminum skin. It hydraulic the bottom of the boat, broke through the bottom of the boat, blew out the deck. Chip nursed that thing back to the bulkhead, which was just in front of the pit area there. And the water's only, I don't know, 8 feet deep or something like that. Jerry jumps out there onto the deck of the boat, Chip's out on the deck of the boat, and then the boat sinks. But the boat's resting on the bottom. Jerry and Chip are on the deck. The water comes up to about here on them. Jerry puts his arm around Chip, says, okay, what do we do now, bub?
The reference to the motorhome. that you talk about, where the cab is separating from the thing. We'd been working pretty hard, and it was time to take a night off. And Jerry says, I hear there's hot springs. And so Jerry says, everybody gets to take a night off, and you're coming with me. And Chip says, well, I don't want to go. And Jerry says, you're the driver, you're going to drive. And so we went up in the hills. I have no idea where we were. Danny? You probably, oh yeah, yes, it was Ogden, Utah, but that's about as close as I can tell you where we were. And it was dark out somewhere. It was dark everywhere. Chris and I were in the seat in between. Jerry was in the co-pilot seat. Chip was driving, and Danny was taking up the rear door. And we traded. Hold on to your ankles. So the blue lights come on, and Chip goes, "What do I do? What do I do?" You're not drinking. It's going to be okay. That's Jerry talking. And actually, you did a good job. The cops let us go. They just let us go. It was interesting. I think your answer was, they've all been drinking, but I haven't, and I'm driving. So what's your problem, officer? And it worked. It was really, I was impressed, Chip. Very good. So that's the rest of the story with that motorhome. Were you with us that night too?
No, I didn't go to.
Good answer.
So, Kelly, while you've been talking, Mike Campbell has come in, who's another crew member.
Well,
we're telling stories that Bob never knew.
I'm too old, I don't remember any. And none that I can tell anyway.
Just change the names. Just put a different boat in.
I think a lot of it was just, that was only my second year racing. And after the first year, which was Circus, it was a little kind of night and day for me. But knowing Chip for as long as I have since the Limited days, and Dave Nolan and all these guys from the Limited stuff, it was a lot of fun. We worked a lot hard, especially after Chip blew the boat over. And we had to put the other boat back together and then go to Mexico, and you all know what happened there. But it was a lot of fun. It's a lot of, these guys, you know, I'm still doing it, so it can't be too bad.
So do we have any questions from the audience yet?
I have a story.
No one ever called him. Chip, yes.
Any questions? Any?
I have a story about Chip and Squire Shop.
All right, let's see if we can get a microphone back to Art. Can someone run that?
And we followed the caravan going down to Acapulco. And Chip we stopped and we're eating. And Dorothy kept telling him, Chip, don't eat the salad, don't eat all this other stuff. You give Montezuma his revenge. Well, when he got down to the race, he went out, he come in the motorhome, sit down, take 5, you go over the wall and go out and run the boat. He was determined to run that boat. And the other thing is, Chip saved half of the boats, all of the boats but one, except the Squire Shop. Squire Shop parked outside on this solid pavement. Everybody else parked in this field. It poured down rain that night, and Squire Shop towed every one of those boats out of that swampy deal over there. And thanks to Chip, hey, we had boats down at the race.
Thank you, Art.
I would just like to say, Art, how are you?
I'm fine.
Art is probably the oldest company to still be in Unlimiteds, and I think, and I totally respect the whole time you've been here, Art. We're all in Mexico when we had protection after they got robbed almost, and so we were given people walking around with guns on their back to protect us, and it was the most interesting time I ever had with a Jeep picking me up with 2 guards on both sides and sitting in the back seat. So anyway, welcome. I'm glad you're here today, and I'm working with your son right now. We're going to meet tomorrow morning, matter of fact, on a great move that Art is doing for this sport along with David, and to try to get some more sponsors and get more direction of where we're going in this sport. And I highly respect Art and your group starting it.
So we're just about to wrap up the formal portion. There is pizza. Gary, do you have anything you want to say before we...
Make sure everybody's got a raffle ticket. We'll do that shortly. And some auction items over there.
Yeah. Be sure you bid on the silent auction items. Park, can you hear me?
Up here.
All right, can you run into my office and maybe get some Sharpies? Because I bet there are going to be people that want autographs. There are some black and white photos of the Squire Shop we were handing out back at the table there. I bet you could probably get somebody to autograph them. Again, any questions from the audience? Anything you've always wanted to know about Bob Style? Or is there anything that you guys want to tell Bob that you didn't have the nerve to? You know, we all had stuff when we were racing where you go, oh crap, I hope the owner never finds out about this. Is there anything he hasn't found out you want to tell? Yeah, we will restore that next, by the way. All right, guys, thank you very, very much. Is the pizza ready over there? Has it been opened up? There's pizza, there's beer. Chip, we got you Budweiser and Miller, just to make sure that... All right, thank you, everybody, for coming. Oh, wait, the photographer wants... Kelly? The photographer wants to take another picture of all the panel members.